The psychological impact of fascism. How societies become numb and how to resist. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the country you once knew, one of freedoms, rights, and democratic values, has eroded into something unrecognizable. But the truth is, authoritarianism rarely arrives overnight. Fascism takes root slowly, creeping into the cracks of a society, exploiting fears, economic instability, and divisions. It happens so gradually that by the time people realize their rights are disappearing, they have already been conditioned to accept it. What is fascism? Fascism is a far-right, authoritarian political ideology that prioritizes total state control over individuals and institutions, suppression of dissent through propaganda, censorship, and violence, nationalism, and scapegoating to unite the population against an enemy, militarization and police power to enforce compliance, corporate and political collusion to maintain control. Fascist governments exploit fear, economic instability, and social divisions to seize power, convincing citizens that authoritarianism is necessary for their security. And as this happens, something terrifying occurs. People stop feeling anything about it. In this video, we'll break down how fascism psychologically affects a society, why people become emotionally numb as their rights disappear, how to fight this numbness and resist authoritarianism before it's too late. The psychological tactics of fascism. Fascism is not just a political structure, it's a psychological weapon. It manipulates emotions, reshapes social norms, and controls behavior through a series of tactics designed to create compliance. Here's how it works. Fear as a tool of control. Fascist movements thrive on fear. They manufacture enemies, whether it's immigrants, political dissenters, religious minorities, or activists, and convince the public that these groups are responsible for society's problems. Fear overrides logic, making people more willing to sacrifice their freedoms in exchange for the illusion of security. Psychological effects. Chronic anxiety and stress increase reliance on authority figures who claim to offer safety. The population starts accepting harsher government control under the guise of protection. People become more willing to turn on their neighbors, believing that reporting threats will keep them safe. The normalization of injustice. Fascism slowly shifts what is considered acceptable. At first, it may be small infractions on human rights, banning books, restricting protests, or silencing journalists. But over time, these escalations create a new normal where oppression feels routine. Psychological effects. Creeping acceptance. People adjust to new authoritarian policies as if they were always normal. Cognitive dissonance. Those who once supported democracy struggle to reconcile their past beliefs with the new reality. Complicity by exhaustion. Citizens feel powerless and overwhelmed, leading to inaction. The destabilization of truth. A key fascist strategy is to distort reality. Governments and media under authoritarian control flood the public with lies, conspiracy theories, and conflicting narratives. This psychological warfare causes people to lose trust in institutions, leading them to disengage, feel confused and overwhelmed, making them more likely to accept state narratives, become cynical, believing that nothing can be done to change the system. How societies become emotionally numb to fascism. As authoritarianism expands, people experience psychological desensitization, a form of emotional numbness where horrors no longer provoke outrage. This happens through repetitive exposure to violence and injustice. When news cycles are filled with government crackdowns, police brutality and human rights violations, the public initially reacts with shock. But over time, they become conditioned to accept these events as routine. Examples: mass arrests of protesters that once sparked national outrage become background noise. Policies once seen as extreme, such as mass surveillance, are now accepted as necessary security measures. People stop questioning violations of rights because they feel powerless to stop them. The gradual loss of empathy. Under fascism, empathy becomes a liability. Authoritarian leaders paint marginalized groups as threats, making it easier for the majority to justify mistreatment against them. Psychological shift. People begin to see suffering as deserved rather than unjust. The more individuals suppress their guilt, the more they rationalize oppression. Society stops viewing victims of the regime as human beings, instead seeing them as abstract problems. Learned helplessness and political apathy. As fascism tightens its grip, people begin to believe that resistance is futile. This is a psychological state called learned helplessness, where repeated exposure to oppression makes individuals feel powerless to change their situation. Signs of learned helplessness. Avoiding political discussions because they seem pointless. Accepting oppression as an inevitable part of life. Feeling emotionally detached from events that should spark outrage. How to fight numbness and resist fascism. If emotional numbness is a symptom of fascism, then awareness, emotional resilience, and action are the cure. Here's how to fight back. Rebuild your emotional awareness. Stay present. Instead of detaching from disturbing news, allow yourself to process emotions like anger, grief, and frustration. Avoid desensitization. Take breaks from media when needed, but do not disengage permanently. Connect with real stories. Instead of viewing victims as statistics, engage with personal testimonies from those affected. Resist psychological manipulation. Question narratives. Fact-check everything, especially when governments or media push fear-based rhetoric. Reject division. Do not let the regime manipulate you into viewing certain groups as enemies. Recognize incremental oppression. Speak out against small injustices before they escalate. Cultivate collective resistance. Strengthen community bonds. Authoritarianism isolates people. Build networks of support and resistance. Engage in local activism. Change begins at the local level. Attend city council meetings, support independent journalists, and protect vulnerable communities. Refuse to be silent. Authoritarian regimes rely on mass silence. Even small acts of defiance, writing, protesting, speaking out, help disrupt their control. Maintain hope and agency. Remember history. No fascist regime lasts forever. Oppressive systems have been dismantled before, and they will be dismantled again. Act, even when it feels small. No action is too minor. Every petition signed, conversation started, or truth spoken chips away at the system. Support those on the front lines. Activists, journalists, and human rights defenders need backing through donations, sharing information, or showing up. The fight against fascism is psychological. Fascism is not just a political battle. It is a psychological war against awareness, resistance, and empathy. The more a society numbs itself to injustice, the easier it is for authoritarianism to tighten its grip. The first step in resisting is waking up emotionally, refusing to normalize oppression, fighting the urge to detach, and recognizing that your voice still matters. History has shown that even the most oppressive regimes can be overturned when people refuse to comply. The question is, will you resist? Let us know in the comments how you think people can fight against psychological numbness in times of crisis. And if you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It's through awareness that change begins. Stay aware, stay strong, stay free.